All right. So, um, this is first time for me too. So most of the time, at least I know somebody in the room. But Julie, I don't know, what is it? 2 months ago, you reached out to me. Okay. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Jack Hummel, and there's been a lot of things going around. That's why we had to do this later than we were supposed to. But I'm the co-owner of Limitless Performance. It's a new startup in Janesville, Wisconsin. I was the previous owner of CTG, so it was called Close the Gate. It was basketball training, volleyball training, and sports psychology, which is what my degree is in. And then we partnered with an athletic trainer in Janesville, and we ended up calling it Limitless Performance, and we bought an old tennis facility. It was called PTF. So now we work out of a 58,000 square foot space in Janesville. And one of the spaces is a sports psych classroom. So like right now I have 100 kids in my sports psychology summer classes. And so that's essentially why I'm here today. I'm here to talk about psychology and how it relates to disc golf, and kind of give you my 2 cents on where the field's at and the biggest tools that I can give you to help you with your sport and outside of your sport. Cool? So first, let's talk about psychology. And so this is why it's fun for me too, because you guys are my first official adult class. I've done young adults, but not in an adult sense. So psychology, do we know what psychology is? Yep, so study of the mind, of course, its relation to sports. So when we're talking about disc golf, and I'm going to make this as interactive as possible, so it's not just me talking the entire time. What are the biggest things you think disc golfers struggle with mentally?
Distractions.
Okay, distractions, that's good.
Consistency.
Consistency, good.
Negative self-talk.
Negative self-talk, good.
Focus.
Focus, we're hitting them all on the dot. There's a few more I was thinking of.
Skills.
Skills, okay. What about like if you're a 5-foot putt? We tend to overthink maybe. Overthink is a big one that I was thinking. Those were the main ones. So that was really good. So I wrote down overthinking, focus, anxiety, consistency, expectations, failure, attitude, fatigue. Is there one? Did someone say one that's not on there? I can't remember. But essentially the speech is going to be about the main causes of these and what we can do to work with these main causes. So everything's going to be centered around how can I give you the most immediate results that you can be given. So in terms of the philosophy, so I created the curriculum, and it's based around meditation and mindfulness, and I'm explaining what that is. But it's a holistic approach. I take a lot of different perspectives on the mind. I try not to get too narrowed in a field because then we make worse decisions, in my opinion, if we're coloring our perception with what we believe is true. That's the biggest thing I try to get with my students is it's not what we think, it's rather what actually gets results. And so taking in a lot of different perspectives, it's based on science-based evidence. Everything I say or give has been proven many, many times over. And so the biggest thing it's centered around is neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity, has anybody heard of this term before? Okay, Ryan's shaking his head. What do you think neuroplasticity is?
From what I understand, it's the brain's ability to learn and adapt to new things.
Yeah, so it's its ability to change itself, essentially. So like 30 years ago in psychology, we used to think people were fixed, right? So if you grew up an introvert, you're going to be an introvert. If you grew up an extrovert, you're going to be an extrovert. Those types of things. We know now that the brain internally and how it connects with different neurons in the brain can change, and also the actual structure of the brain. So an example could be the amygdala. That's our part of the brain that uses a lot of reactivity and emotions. So if we're more reactive, amygdala is going to get bigger. Where if we actually learn how to watch our emotions and not immediately give in to these reactions, it can actually get smaller, and vice versa with different things. So it's centered around that, and that it's proven that if you do deliberate things, if you do certain exercises with your attention, you can change and essentially become whoever you want to be. Obviously, we're all dealt different cards. It's just like anything in athletics, right? Some people are predisposed to be able to jump higher than others. The same qualities within the mind, but you can do things to improve whatever we're trying to prove upon with ourselves. And so that's why it's all about mindfulness. So mindfulness is the largest catalyst for maximizing neuroplasticity. So essentially it's paying very, very close attention is what activates the ability to do neuroplasticity. And I'm going to go much deeper into what that actually is. And then perceptual evolution. So a big thing that I do with my students is I focus on assigning meditations, and that's the perceptual evolution. So by that it means seeing things in a different way, right? Because a lot of people, some people will be obsessed with reading books to try and grow themselves, which is great. That's intellectual evolution. But if you're always seeing that information in the same way, okay, it's not actually growing you. You're seeing it from the same perspective, nothing is changing, right? So that's what meditation does. It allows you to see things differently. So for learning more information intellectually and learning more things about meditation and seeing it differently, that's kind of how we can grow the mind in the fastest way possible. Limited energy. So that's something I talk about a lot in terms of the capacity of the mind. So we don't have infinite energy. So opportunity costs, right? In business, I'm sure a lot of you have heard that term before, right? When you spend certain qualities or quantities of things somewhere, that's less energy being spent somewhere else. So examples could be anxiety or overthinking. You're thinking about what could happen in the future with your putt. That's energy not being spent in the moment, which we'll get to, and that's the only place you can grow. So opportunity costs. When we're spending more time in the past or the future, there's less energy being spent in the moment, which is how you actually get good at something. So we'll talk a lot about that and the controllables, because that's what I'm trying to do is take this for what it's worth. Take what you think benefits you most in your certain direction of life right now and your game. But I'm just trying to give you tools to find your own answers, which is what we're going to do. It's not we're giving you a bunch of statements and slides and facts. It's we're going to give you something to do, and you learn from that. You learn what's inside you already. And freedom and power, right? So essentially, lack of freedom is needing something to be a certain way, right? And so for me, like if I teach you how to meditate on the breath is always with you. There's never a moment in your life when you're not with the breath. So if we can give you something that you can use to work with your thoughts and feelings in real time, at any time, that's freedom, right? You have the ability to work with something, and you don't need something to do that. Where, say, someone finds, salvation in a book, let's say, about disc golf and how to work with disc golf. If you need to go get the book to feel better about overthinking or having less anxiety, you're not free. You're dependent on something. So that's another big thing is we're trying to get you away from being dependent, and at any moment you can work on what we're going to talk about today. Cool. Where are we at? Good start so far? Awesome. Okay. So there's two main causes that we're going to talk about today, and this is the root cause of everyone's psychological struggle most of the time. Okay, and the first one, so this is relating to overthinking, lack of confidence, attitude, fatigue. Okay, the cause of this is mindlessness. A great example of mindlessness is, say you're driving and you get to your destination and you have no idea how you got there, right? You were completely mindless, your body was doing the work, you were acting out of habit and conditioning. I'm sure that happens to a lot of us, okay?
It's not before you start drinking.
Yeah. So that's the number one cause of these problems. And the opposite spectrum of this, the solution is mindfulness, okay? So what mindfulness is, it's on-purpose awareness of the present moment, okay? And the key word is on purpose. It's an intentional, deliberate awareness of what's going on inside you and what's going on around you, okay? When we're mindless, I sometimes like to use the phrase the dictator. So the dictator, the people have no control with the dictator in power. When we're mindless, we're at whims to whatever our habits or responsive reactions are to things. So say we step up to, a 5-foot disc golf putt, and we start immediately overthinking. And it seems like every single time we get up to a 5-footer, we start to overthink, right? If we're mindless and we continue to do that, we are conditioned to respond in that way every single time we get up to the 5-foot putter, okay? The only thing that's going to change that is mindfulness. If we can step in, watch what's going on, and then respond to it in a different way, that's what taps into the ability for the brain to change itself and respond differently to different events, okay? So number one, and we'll go deeper into it, but number one cause is mindlessness, right? When we're on autopilot, you don't have power, you don't have control, you're acting out of habit. We're not changing anything, we're not growing. Okay, mindfulness is what stops that. It gives you power and allows you to change what you want to change. Okay, the second biggest problems we disc golfers have: anxiety, failure, focus, expectations. Okay, the cause of this: we time travel. We're rarely ever in the only moment that ever exists, and that's the present moment. And we'll talk about that, but the past and future are just present moment thoughts. Okay, we're not saying that the past, the experiences you had aren't real. We just have to remember that when we think about the past, it's a thought about the event. It's not the actual experience itself. And it's very beneficial to have this understanding, because when we're mindless, there's something called fusion, okay? What's fusion? Have you heard that term before? Like when, say, they mix, right? They fuse, they connect, okay? When we're mindless, we habitually identify with thoughts and feelings. So what that means essentially is we listen blindly. So someone said, was that you, Donald, that said negative thinking?
No.
Who said negative thinking?
Ryan.
Oh, I did.
Okay, that's awesome, right? So when we're mindless, we don't see those thoughts happen, but they actually can cause feelings, negative feelings that you experience. And so examples, when we time travel, when we're fusing with things in the past or in the future, that's preventing us from being here. And like I said earlier, now is the only place you can grow. A lot of our problems are literally being lost in the past or the future. In reality, there's never really a problem in the present moment if you're fully here. Your problems come from saying you get up to the putt, you're thinking about missing the putt, or it's about something that could happen. It's not about what's actually happening. Okay, and the solution to that is presence, and we're going to talk about how you can actually build that quality. Cool? Okay. So, the wings of mindfulness. You guys can draw, normally I have a smartboard, but you can draw a butterfly with 2 wings right now if you want to, or something that represents wings. So, if one of the wings doesn't work, you can't do what? Can't fly. So there's 2 really, really particular qualities about mindfulness that you have to do, otherwise it's not actually doing mindfulness correctly. Okay, the first one is watching, right? That's the first wing, is learning the ability to watch. Okay, the reason mindfulness is so important, let's say, does anybody in here have a movie they want to go see? Are there any movies out right now that someone hasn't seen yet, but they're interested in seeing?
Quiet Place?
Quiet Place. So you have the new one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you haven't seen it yet? What's your favorite part of the movie?
Who knows?
You don't know, you haven't seen it,
Die.
right? So if you don't watch the thoughts and feelings that go on inside you, you can't understand them and you can't see the cause. That means you can't replicate things you want, and that means you can't stop the things from happening that you don't want, because you don't actually see what's going on. So that's the first step, is learning how to watch, okay? The second wing of mindfulness is non-judgment. And we're going to talk about what that actually means. So we got the watcher and non-judgment. Okay, and I'm going to break down non-judgment because it can get really technical, and it's kind of actually hard to determine if you're judging something or if you're not judging something. But, okay, so 2 different types of perceptions, right? And so perception, does anyone know what that definition could mean? I'm assuming we've heard of perception before, or no? It's okay if we haven't. Okay, how you see something. That is perception. All right, there's 2 major types of perception when we talk about the mind. There's an objective perception and a subjective perception. Objective and subjective, have we heard of those terms before?
The earth is round, objective.
Okay, yeah. So objective, so let's say we have a favorite show, right? You've seen Quiet Place 1, Julie, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay, so the movie itself does not change. Like you said, it's objective, right? Me and Julie are going to have 2 different perceptions on the same objective movie, right? Say Julie loves Quiet Place, I hate Quiet Place. 2 different perceptions on the same exact thing, okay? When we're in an objective perception, we're not judging, okay? A subjective perception means we are judging. So let's take an event. Let's say that, Chip, you get up to do your 5-foot putt, and you miss the putt. Okay, what are a lot of times the thoughts that are going to go through our head when we mess up when we don't want to or think we should be messing up?
You suck.
You suck.
You suck.
You can't putt. You suck at disc golf.
Just quit now.
Yeah, just quit now, okay?
Here's my bag.
Yeah.
You're so stupid.
Uh-huh. That's perfect. So those are all judgmental perceptions of what actually happened. Now, a non-judgmental perception would be what? What do you think a statement in that scenario could be for non-judgment?
I pushed it a little right, or the putt was a little right.
Okay. I would say you're close. So I would say you just state what happened, right? What happened? So you
missed the putt.
You missed the putt, right? That's a non-judgmental statement. Why do you think that's so powerful when we talk about mindfulness?
Because it's right there and you're analyzing it immediately.
Okay, so when you watch a movie, let's say you're watching a movie, do you go in the movie and start changing the movie?
Depends on the movie.
Okay.
Horror film, right? It's interactive, right?
Okay, if it's not an interactive movie, you're not going in the movie to change what's going on, okay?
These aren't those books where you can choose. Go to this page. Or
Yeah.
That page.
Okay, so this is a good phrase to write down. Judgment distorts perception. Okay? If you're judging an event, you're actually not seeing it clearly. Seeing it clearly means you're seeing it without your perspective, what you want the situation to be or to not be. And that's what mindfulness is trying to do. It's trying to have you see the moment and the feelings and the thoughts that you have as clearly as possible so that you can understand it, you can understand what's causing the problem, and you can learn how to respond to the situation differently. And so non-judgment is essentially trying to see things as they are, not how you want them to be, not how you don't want them to be. But that's what's going to allow you to learn how to respond in a positive manner. And you're going to see it as it is, not how you want it to be. Are we kind of getting why not? Okay, cool. So judgment is separation. So, right, where an event happens, you have your short putt. Judgment separates the event. You're adding two perceptions to what happened. So if I'm subjective perception, there is what happened, but also my take on it, right? That separation's the problem. That's the tension and strain, right? The reason that we're struggling mentally is because there is that separation of what happened. Where if you're trying to practice non-judgment a lot of times, there is no issues, okay? Because it's not your take on what happened. And the biggest thing is, do you have to judge something to know what's helpful and not helpful?
Sorry, what was the question?
Do you have to judge something to know if it's helpful or not helpful?
Well, I guess maybe when I hear the word judge, I hear the word analyze or review.
Yeah,
So I don't know how I could not review something and learn from it.
okay, so that's a great point. So I would argue that you don't need to judge, meaning label it as good or bad or like or dislike to know if it helps you. You watch the cause, you watch consequence. You do something, you watch what happens. You don't do something, you watch what happens. I don't think you need to label it as good or bad. You can label it as helpful or not helpful, or just watching cause and consequence. I would argue that that is a much more productive way of seeing than judging, because it's trying to get you away from that labeling of good or bad.
So more sort of like sticking to the facts. Like, I missed the putt left.
Yes.
I missed the putt right.
Yes, because
That
we'll,
was a bad putt.
yes, okay, because we'll learn. So all of this, if we break it down, it's stemming from the ego, and the ego is our perception of ourselves. The ego is what causes more judgment. Judgment causes more thoughts, and the thoughts are what cause more feelings, right? So when we're having fear, anxiety, this stems from the thought about the judgment that you had of the event. Where if we cut out judgment altogether, you're going to have less overthinking thoughts, and you're going to have less emotional responses to the judgment you made. And it's not going to be perfect. Judging is just ingrained in how humans are. But if we can start to train ourselves to be more non-judgmental, just seeing situations as they are, you're going to have more choice in how you respond to what's going on. Effortlessness, is this a term that you've heard other coaches use before? Being effortless when you golf? Okay, so so I'm a basketball player. So Stephen Curry, do we know who that is?
Yeah.
Okay, he's very effortless when he shoots the basketball. It doesn't look like he's trying very hard. When we're not effortless, there's strain and there's tension. And like I said, judgment is what separates an event, and that's what causes all the tension and the strain and the issues, because it's not in line with the way you want it to be. And that's what causes the rabbit hole of things not going as well as you want them to. So you're actually going to play more effortless when we take on that non-judgmental perception or that mindfulness, trying to see it as it is, not how I want it to be. Are we all somewhat on the same page? Okay, cool. Now, thoughts. This is going to be huge because essentially the gist of this speech is going to be thoughts are very, very overrated. Okay, most of the times they're not true, and we listen to them habitually all the time, and they kind of run our lives. So the first thing to understand about thoughts is that we have a negativity bias. Okay, so for every, we say 5 negative things for every 1 positive thing in our brain naturally. Okay, so if we're not watching, that's how much more prone we are to negativity than positivity. Okay, and there's a lot of reasons for this. But in today's day and age, we don't have to focus as much on survival. Versus 200 years ago, people were much more concerned about food and housing and things and necessities. Okay, we don't need that fear, anxiety-like response as much as we used to, which is what most of our problems are coming from in things like sports. Like, it's just a game. We're trying to learn how to perform better. We don't need to get super anxious about a 5-foot putt in disc golf. in terms of reality, so when I talk about something as real, to me, my definition of reality is something right here. All of our five senses are working together and in the present moment, okay? That's what I would consider reality. If I think about my mom, I'm not saying my mom isn't real, but I have to remember it's a thought about my mom, okay? We're going to talk about that a lot. We have to be very careful of thoughts because a lot of times we make thoughts and reality synonymous, and they are not, okay? Thought is an added layer to what is going on. Thoughts cause feelings. We talked about that. So if we're mindless a lot of times and we know we have a negativity bias, that means there's lots of thoughts turning in our brain that we don't see. If we're more prone to being negative and we're mindless a lot of times, probably what feelings are we going to cause more of? Not negative, right? Because that's our natural state. Feelings aren't always caused by thoughts, but almost every single time, if we start turning mindfulness on more, we'll see that our mood was caused by some thought about something that happened. And so that's the biggest thing we need to start catching on to, is that those negative feelings are likely stemming from the thoughts of when we're mindless. Because obviously when people are aware, they're mindful, and they're present, nobody's intentionally trying to be in a bad mood or do the wrong thing. It's when we're mindless, that's when those things happen. We can't control thoughts. This is a misconception people think a lot of times, is that they can control thoughts, right? If I told you all not to think of something right now, like a pink elephant, most of you would think of a pink elephant. Okay, if I said the color green, think of something that's green, all of you would think of different thoughts that are green. Okay, it's not something we can control, and so that means it's not something we should beat ourselves up when we have intrusive thoughts or anxiety. Okay, it's not about escaping or getting rid of things, it's learning how to work with what's there. That's the difference. I'm not trying to teach you how to get rid of thoughts. Thoughts aren't the enemy, it's when we're lost and we're thinking. That's the enemy, because we can't see what's going on, we can't understand it. And like I said, the problem is we blindly listen to thoughts. When we're in that autopilot state, the thoughts are running us. Whatever natural thoughts occur, that's what we're going to respond to. We have no choice in those situations. And then a fun stat is we have 60,000 thoughts a day. Okay? Most of us, unless we've practiced mindfulness or meditation, see none of those thoughts. We don't see them clearly in our mind. And so there's a lot of things that are being caused in how we respond to situations that... Get out of here! Yeah. that we have no control over. Cool? So biggest thing is we have to be more skeptical of thoughts, and they can be very overrated. All right, so now time, same concept. So illusion, what is illusion's definition?
Something that appears to be there.
Something you think is real but is actually not. So it's that same concept. Past is just a present moment thought. Future is just a present moment thought, right? Again, it's not saying that that past experience wasn't real. We just have to remember it's a thought about what happened, which is where it gets so dangerous for people, is because they envision that something not going right in the disc golf, or you can't get over the last play that you had when you missed something that you thought you should have made. Our brain is a lot of times listening to this and experiencing it as if it were happening. But we have to remember it's just a thought about what's happening. And same concept, do we ever have a problem if we're fully here? If you truly are in this moment, I would argue that you don't have a problem. Because most of your problems are thinking about thoughts, thinking about things that did happen that didn't go the way you wanted, or you're thinking about things that are in the future that you were expecting to happen or not wanting to happen. When we're fully here, I would argue that we're not struggling. We don't have problems. But it's when we start to think about being outside of here, that's where kind of everything goes downhill. So learning how to empty ourselves, empty our perception, and be in the moment is kind of the crucial key to when you get up to that really, really easy putt. Your body's just doing it, but you're aware of what's going on. We're not overthinking.
But part of the focus.
Yep.
You come up to a shot.
Yep.
This is, I got to take into account the wind, it's raining, the disc selection, all of this, the angle I got to let go.
Yep.
You're thinking about all of that.
Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about it, but my suggestion to that would be is learning how to just see that. It's not about turning off thoughts. It's about watching what thoughts are occurring. Because when we're having issues, there's thoughts we're not seeing that are causing us those problems. So it's not saying we shouldn't take those things into account, but when we're mindless and when we're judging things, that's when strain occurs, when it's harder to kind of get out of our own head. But I love that. Guys, interrupt me at any single point and ask questions or interject if you disagree with something I say. Totally cool with that. And then same concept, growth potential, right? So growth potential, all that means is the more you're here, the more you're going to grow, because now's the only place you can grow. You can't grow thinking about the future. You can't grow thinking about the past. You only grow here, right? So it's that opportunity cost again. When we're more in the present or future, there's less energy being spent in the moment, and that's where we get really, really good. Okay, monkey mind. Have you guys heard this term before? No. Okay, this is good. Okay, so monkey mind is a term they use in Eastern philosophy. And what does a monkey do when it's on branches? It jumps around. It's branch to branch to branch. If you've ever sat down and closed your eyes and watched your brain, okay, you're going from, what did I do this morning? What's for dinner? You know, that car's blue. It's so sporadic and it's chaotic and everything's going all over the place, okay? So the reason that it's hard for us to focus and it's hard for us to not be distracted is because we're naturally scattered. We're naturally wired to go all over the place with our thoughts. So what focus is essentially recollecting ourselves. We're collecting the scatteredness of our brain being in the past or the future or thinking about this, right? And we're bringing it to this moment. Same concept. The more energy we can put into here, the more we can see this moment clearly, the better we're going to get at handling the thoughts and emotions or whatever thoughts we're having that are causing us problems. Because if that, analyzing the wind and things of that nature, if that's helping you, then that's fine. But if you're watching, you can make those decisions. Or if we're not watching, you have no choice whatsoever. You're going to go with whatever you've done naturally. So real focus equals refocus. So this is the difference between concentration and focus. I like my students to focus on the concept of focus versus concentration. Concentration is how well you can sustain focus over a period of time, right? So say I sit down to meditate. There's periods when I'm focused, when I'm not focused, when I'm focused, when I'm not focused, okay? This is a span of time, okay? That is what concentration is. From start to finish, how concentrated was I? Focus is just worried about the actual coming back to the moment, the refocusing of when we're lost. So they've done studies on monks from Asia that are super, super concentrated, that can focus for really long periods of time, okay? And they're actually, if they look at it from a microscopic perspective, what they're doing is they're getting lost for split seconds, and then they're coming back to whatever they're focusing on. So it's not this perfect hold of constant focus. It's actually they get lost, but they reset really, really fast. Where someone who doesn't have good focus, they get lost for long periods of time, and then they come back. They get lost, and then they come back, right? So having good focus is essentially learning how to refocus over and over and over again. But when you have that perspective, can you fail? If all focus is refocus, you can't really fail. So you notice you're lost, you notice you're not focused, and you reset, right? That's a much better mindset than the concentration where you beat yourself up. You know, I'm not as focused as I should be. People dwell on that, they get stuck, and then they're not as good at being in the moment, right? Being in the moment is learning how to let go of everything that's not now. That's what being in the moment means. And if we're just focused on focus, it doesn't matter how long the room is dark for. That's one of my favorite phrases. When we're mindful, it's like having the lights on in the room. We can see what's going on. When we're not mindful, when we're mindless, the light's off. We don't know what's going on inside us. We don't know what's running our responses and our reactions to what's going on. So essentially, that coming back is the muscle we're trying to build. That's what's going to give you more focus, and that's what can hold your mindfulness for longer periods of time. So focus is the battery pack to your mindfulness, right? So if I have more focus, I have more energy to use the mindfulness that I have. Examples of this in disc golf could be, say you do miss a putt, right? Obviously, there's 18 holes in disc golf, right? It's just like golf. Okay, that's what I thought. So say you miss a really, really easy putt, and you started to practice mindfulness, and you're trying to catch your negative thoughts like Ryan suggested. Okay, so he misses a putt. He catches himself telling himself he's not good, right? That's very powerful that he's seeing this happen, because he can look at it and contemplate, is this helping me? No, it's not helping me. But if Ryan doesn't have good focus, say he has another domino effect of negative thoughts, he can't hold that mindfulness to see all those other things that's going on. So when we have better focus, we can hold the mindfulness for longer periods of time and then not let negative thoughts affect the next play and let our play worsen because of one play that happened on hole 3. So that's why you have to work at both together, right? So the ability to watch non-judgmentally and then focus is your ability to do that over a period of time. Is that cool?
That was excellent.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I never know where my audience is at, if they're liking what I'm talking about or
I
not.
mean, I can't speak for everybody else, but I liked it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and that's why, just again, focus is a better versus concentration. It's better to focus on focus because you don't have that pass-fail mindset. It's you're gone, that's okay. The only moment that exists is now. Reset to now. Let go. That's much more positive than you've got to be this over a sustained period of time. That's a pass-fail mindset that puts strain on you.
That's where I would just forget about what happened.
Yep.
The next shot is all that matters.
Yeah, that's,
I can't change that.
yes.
This next shot is what matters.
Yes, that's perfect, right? And I would even, if I could play with your words, I would say this shot or this moment instead of we're not looking to the next one, we're here where we are.
Well, and that's where I get into trouble with that. Like, yeah, I can go on to the next hole, but I'm already thinking of the next hole. I need a birdie this one because I missed it.
Yeah, you thinking I got a birdie this one,
I
this
gotta
one.
get that mountain back.
So, and that's,
That shot, I'm on to the next one.
But then it's like, well, no,
That
you
puts
take
me
a par
back
on
on the
how we go
podium.
to the next easier one.
yeah. And all those thoughts are all, most of the time, like in sports, it's about where you're not here. So we're going to have way less thoughts if we just be here. And we're not going to have that overthinking or anxious feeling.
So something that I had suggested or suggest a lot is having being more analytical, aka with a checklist after the throw. Is the disc going where I want it to go? That's like question number one. As soon as it's out of my hand. If it's not going to where I wanted it to go, how does my body feel? Like, am I literally at the end of my throw? You know, obviously there's a whole, you know, where your body's positioned. Where is my body? Is it positioned properly? But so something that I had thought of providing was a checklist of pre and post throw that puts you in a place where you can focus on the now, but analyze it, because
Yeah.
the immediate moments after that throw is when you know the most about that throw.
Yep.
When you try to go to the next hole and you're still thinking about that throw, like that doesn't help you. But if you can take a brief couple of seconds to analyze that throw, I think that it can help improve something.
Yeah, I completely, so whatever gives immediate effects to a person and helps them positively, that's what we're going for. The only thing we have to be careful of whenever we do stuff like that is you don't become dependent, right? If you need to feel like you have to go through this mental checklist to let go of the moment, then that's when it could maybe become an issue. Where if we can learn to just watch our breath and that lets go of everything else, that's immediate, like that's in the moment. But if it helps someone to do that, all for it. Whatever can help you be in the moment and feel clear-headed and see the moment clearly, that's what you should do. The way you get there doesn't matter as much. Is that a good take on it, or?
Yeah.
Okay. I think, yeah, if the goal is to be in the moment more. So if whatever you do does that, we're going to have less issues, you're going to play better. Cool. So the flow state, have you guys heard of this before? What do we think the flow state is?
Everything's just working, everything's going right.
Yes.
You're in a zone where it's like, hit this line, hit that line, boom, all right.
So
But like,
that's perfect. The zone.
you're robotic.
Yeah, your body's a machine, right? There's no you getting in the way of what's going on. And so that's what the flow state is. It's a super concentrated state of the mind. So you're super, super focused. When this happens, when we're super focused, that means we're in the moment, okay? And all of our thoughts are coming from things normally outside the moment. So when we're in the flow state or in the zone, we tend to be thinking? No, right? It's in that effortless state, and that's where it comes back to what were we gonna say?
Grab it and go.
Yeah, you're just doing it. And so that's the thing, like I would say when we're thinking about the wind or whatever, in the flow state, I would argue that we're not thinking about it. Our body just naturally knows where to go. It feels the wind. It's not telling itself, I have to turn this way. It just does it.
But every time you step up to a shot, something's different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Every time.
Well, that's why you have wind dummies. You watch them
Uh-huh.
throw it. That's what their disc did.
No,
Yeah.
So-
But if you're in the flow state, you have the box.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
No, that's good.
But then to argue that the flow state, you're just kind of, everything's just kind of going. So like, if you're like, well, like you're not really feeling the wind. It's like you're kind of just like, I grab a disc and I go.
Yeah, you just do it.
You know, like it's like me in bowling. It's like I pick up the ball, I get my feet set, and just set it and go. And I mean, everything just flow.
Yeah.
You don't
It's-
have to worry about the outside factors really until a disc decides to flip or do
Yeah.
something.
That's what we're trying to do is get you more in tune with feeling versus the thoughts. And I'm trying to stay away, but that's kind of that intuition type of stuff. You just know, and it just happens. But I want to stick and talk to things that are facts, and I don't want to get in the intuition realm. But the flow state, right? So if we learn how to focus better, okay, if we can practice deliberately training the focus muscle in the mind, you're giving more opportunities for the flow state because it's that super concentrated state where you're just here and there's no thoughts occurring. It's effortless. Cool? Okay. Couple more things. So simulations. So just like, virtual reality, we know what that is, right? Like those VR headsets. So those are simulations, right? That's virtual reality. Is it a problem if, say, you have virtual reality on your head and you forget that that's virtual reality and you think it's real? It's a big issue, okay? That's, again, what a lot of us do when we don't see our thoughts, right? We think that virtual reality is real, or our body responds to it in that same way. And so when I think about something, I'm considering that a simulation right now because it's a thought about what happened. It's not the actual experience. Simulations are overestimations. That's a good phrase to write down. Essentially what that means is when we think about something in the future, let's say we're thinking about something, I win the disc golf league and it's the coolest thing ever. Our body and brain are going to respond to that more positively than if it actually happened in real life. So what this means is our brain is wired. It's never going to be as good as it seems if you actually experience it, but it's also never as bad as it seems if you actually experience it. So say I think about a bad player, an embarrassing moment or something went terribly wrong. I went to do my driver for the disc golf and it hit the ground or something. I don't know.
Shanked it right.
Yeah.
20 feet off the tee, it was bad.
Thinking about
I did that today.
I did that yesterday.
So thinking about that moment is going to feel more negative than it actually was in the experience itself, okay? And the reason for this is because a chemical called dopamine in our head. Have we heard of this chemical before? Okay, so what's dopamine? It's your happy juice, okay? So it's the chemical that helps you feel short-term pleasure or relief, right? We need that because dopamine's what makes our body go outside of us, right? So we get dopamine when we eat food. Okay, we need that, otherwise we wouldn't go eat food if it didn't feel really, really good immediately after eating it. But we have an opportunity. Like I said, now is day and age where survival is normally never number one on someone's priority list today versus, say, 300 years ago. Okay, so we have an opportunity. Right now, most of us are wired to have dopamine outside of the moment, which is why why we have such a tendency to think about outside of now. Because we're wired to go outside of the moment, to go do something to survive, okay? We don't have to do that as much anymore. So we have, like I said, neuroplasticity, we have an opportunity to rewire to getting dopamine from this moment, right? So wanting this moment, okay? So the reason this is so important is because most people, when they work for something, they work really hard for something, most of the time it's for this reward at the end of the workout. So say you're going through a really, really hard workout and you do not want to be there, only then the gratification after the workout ends. It's statistically proven that you are less likely to work hard if the reward is only coming after, right? And so that's why it's so awesome if we learn how to be more present. That means we're going to get more dopamine from the present moment, and we're actually going to enjoy what's going on. If we enjoy what's going on in this moment, we're going to play better. Because if you're only doing it for the reward after something's over, okay, where's your mind the entire time you train for that? The future. Right? And just like I said, the more our mind and energy is in the moment, the faster you're going to grow. So we stun our growth, essentially, if we're only getting gratification from whatever we're trying to strive for. Yeah, but we're wired to be addicted to want outside of this moment. So the meditation and learning how to be present helps you to rewire that to get it from now.
I'm a little confused on this.
That's okay.
Simulations,
That's okay.
because I've always been, I try to visualize this shot.
Yep.
Here's where I want it to go.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that an overestimation? I'm planning something and I'm trying to execute that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say when I say it's an overestimation, it's the gratification of whatever the visualization is. So say you visualize a successful moment, how that moment would feel is an overestimation of what it would actually be if you experienced it. So like how it feels mentally, like how you think it would feel in real life is more amplified than it would be if you lived it.
I think you're you're analyzing the throw. You're not thinking about what happens when the shot gets there. And I think that's
Right.
what he means is
I'm trying to
thinking about when the
execute that
shot
shot.
gets there.
Okay.
You're analyzing how to get there.
Yes.
But so that's why we have to be careful with visualization. It's not a bad thing. It is if it creates an expectation, because then that's going to create worse performance. If you have an expectation of how it's supposed to look, that's what creates the separation, that strain.
It's gonna be an ace.
So
Yeah.
That's like every other Tinder profile picture, right?
Here we go. Here we go.
all right, we're almost there. So the controllables. So there's only really 3 things I would argue that are fully in your control in your game and life. And that's where we're causing a lot of our problems, is our minds and things that we can partially control or can't control at all. And that's what causes us so many issues. And so the first controllable you have is reset. So if you're lost, if you're not seeing clearly in this moment, you're not fully here, you don't have to dwell on how long you were lost for. You can recollect yourself to this moment. That's step 1 always. Okay? And that's always in your control. I can turn the lights on with that mindful analogy at any point. Okay? You don't have to, and nothing has to be going on for you to be able to activate that. Perception. So that means life and game is always coming at us. So the results of whatever's going on is always coming at us. Okay? We only have 2 things. We can choose how we perceive that. So how am I going to intake what just happened? How am I going to see the event that just happened? I would argue the best way to do that is to be mindful, to see it non-judgmentally. Don't put your take on this is good, this is bad. See it as it is. And then intentionally respond to the situation. Okay, so that's really all we could do, I could argue, because you can train day and night to be the best disc golfer of all time, and you still can't guarantee results. For basketball, if I shoot, say, 10,000 shots a day, I still can't guarantee that I'm going to make every shot I shoot. Okay, so results are a partial controllable. It's not a full controllable. So I would argue don't spend any time thinking about results. Put all your energy into what you can control that maximizes your power. Okay, and that gets, and I have best self here is what I encourage everyone to do with a response. How do I want my best self to act? That'd be a response to a situation, or my best self to respond to different thoughts and feelings I have.
Question about like the non-judgment. So I was just thinking
Yep.
as you were talking, like I hear it all the time, like when we're out in the course or even in just any sport in general, is like, oh, good throw, good job, good this, good that. Like Unlucky.
non-stop,
it's constant.
constant.
And it just got me thinking because like that's a judgment. I'm
Mhm.
making a judgment on
Uh-huh.
that play, and I'm doing it on somebody else's performance a lot of the time too,
Uh-huh.
or people are doing it to
But
me.
it
So-
goes even as far as to it's incredibly repetitive,
Mhm.
and then you feel like if you're a more quieter disc golfer, you feel like you have to comment on another person's.
Oh,
if
100%.
they're-
That's me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
Otherwise, you feel like you're being rude, right?
yes, and then that also brings down your mental state. I feel.
Yeah, it's so hard because judgment's like everywhere. If you get good at mindfulness, you realize, wow, I judge literally everything.
That's what got me
We're-
thinking about it. Is like,
everything. And so that's why it's so powerful when you start to see things non-judgmentally. It's because when you label things good, like it's great, things are going well, the reason that can be an issue sometimes is because if you gravitate more towards those, then that means you're going to gravitate more towards the negative things. So if we're more attached to the good, that means we're going to be more attached to the bad. Where if we're less attached to both, that's where we can kind of keep that middle state and we're not affected by results. You can just focus on my controllables. I'm not going to worry about this goes good or bad. That's not the point. I'm going to maximize what I can do. If that makes sense. I mean, it's so natural to judge, but I don't think it's necessary. I think you can watch what goes on, and you can see the consequence of what happens. You don't have to say this is good, this is bad. It's just what happened when that happened.
Right.
And then you measure it. Does it help? Does it not help? If it doesn't help, you leave it. Yeah, kind of. That is part of the controllable philosophy.
I almost wonder, like, if I do it, like, by me verbalizing someone else's shot, whether it was good, or, I mean, usually it's good, I don't ever tell anybody that it's shot.
I mean,
So-
sometimes you laugh, don't lie.
Yeah,
Sometimes
no, I
you
do,
laugh.
100%. But, like, am I then in turn doing that to
So-
them by verbalizing the judgment on their shot?
This is where it gets fun. So you're judging right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's about just notice you're judging. I'm judging. We don't have to judge the judging itself. And that's where it gets super tricky. But once I teach, we're going to go through how to meditate, and I can talk about it a little more there. Confidence. So like, what is confidence?
Trust.
Yep. So,
I've done this 100
I don't
times.
care exactly.
yep.
I've done it 100 times. Like, do it again.
Yes. Okay. So believing in yourself, that's essentially what a lot of people find confidence as synonymous with. I think confidence has everything to do with power, right? And so power is your ability to control something. If you have a lot of power, you have a lot of control. If you don't have a lot of power, you don't have a lot of control. When we're not confident, we're lacking that power, okay? We're lacking that ability to control something. If we're only focused on the controllables, if we're putting all of our energy into what we can control, you're going to be extremely confident because you're not getting caught up in the things you can't control, like makes, misses. Any type of result is not a controllable. And when we put energy into that, that's what makes someone less or more confident, right? I think that's a dangerous play, right? If you're playing really good, that could be awesome. You're riding high on confidence, but then when things start to not go good, you're not going to ride that high slope anymore. So that's why it's all about the three controllables I just talked about. If we can put more energy into that, that's going to make you a more naturally confident person because you're not caught up in things that you have no control over. And so more power is more confidence, in essence. So meditation, right? I'm sure this is a very stigmatized word, which is why it sucks. What do you guys think of when you think of meditation?
Something to clear your mind.
Tempting to clear your mind, or yeah, okay. And that's why meditation is a similar word to sport. So like sports, disc golf is a sport. There's a bunch of other sports, correct? Okay, so there's a bunch of different meditations. So it's using the mind in a specific way. So it's using our power of attention to train ourselves to get desired qualities, right? So we can do different meditations to activate certain qualities in our mind. And that's what meditation is, essentially. The breath is typically what we focus on in meditation. Does anybody have a guess as to why?
Come on, Chip.
Come on, Chip.
I don't know. Why? Because breath is life? I don't know.
Okay, so, well, if you always have the breath. There's not a single point in your life where you don't have the breath. So it's a tool that's always there. So if we get good at the breath being our savior to the thoughts and the anxieties or overthinking, whatever we're experiencing, if that can be our refuge, we always have that as an option. So that's typically why the breath is always a great thing to learn how to meditate with, because you can activate it at any moment, whether it's stepping up to the 5-foot putt or any overwhelming situation, you could use it. Another thing too, it's really the only thing that the body can do unconsciously but also consciously. Okay, so when we learn to breathe slowly or we breathe naturally, that calms our body and it slows our heart rate down and it makes us in a calmer state. When we're calmer, we can see more clearly, we can make better decisions. We're not caught up in overthinking or what's going to happen with this putt. So that's also why it's special. I can start breathing really fast if I wanted to right now, or I could breathe slowly to change different responses in my body.